I am so excited to share this presentation with you because I think this is really the crux of what we are striving for. We have become so conditioned to living in a world where we are just barely surviving that we've forgotten what it's like to thrive. And with this presentation, I want to share with you the things that we can do using detoxification that will allow us to go in from a surviving state to a thriving state. So here we go. I want to describe the training that human doctors and veterinarians have all gone through. It's called allopathic training. And basically, in our training, we're taught how to name something and then we blame it because that's what we think the problem is. And then we do some kind of symptom suppression with a pill or an ill or a diet or surgery or chemo. That's not fixing the problem. In holistic medicine, people have taken this term holistic and they really don't understand what it means. And basically, what we're talking about is treating the whole. Holistic means we're talking about the entire being that we're putting together, body, mind, and spirit. And I'm going to take it one step past that and talk about bioregulatory medicine. And in bioregulatory medicine, we're understanding how the biological systems that make up this human form that we're talking about affects overall health. And that's the type of medicine that I have become really impassioned with, because once we understand how the biology works, we can understand what we're doing that disrupts it and how we can support it. Now, as unsexy as it sounds, we all have to still do some very basic things as doctors, and that is a thorough history, a thorough physical exam, and a thorough workup. So what does that look like? Well, it means that we have to understand what's missing and what is toxic so that we can start rebalancing. It's all about bringing back homeostasis. This is the 6 steps that I use to create that system. So step number 1, we have to stop doing the things that are causing disease. And that means the diet that we're feeding. If it is not a species appropriate diet, then we need to change. Hummingbirds do not eat the same way as a lion. Bees don't eat the same way as a fish. So we have to really put our critical thinking cap on and say, what did nature design these animals that we love so dearly to eat? Well, our cats are obligate carnivores. Our dogs are scavenger carnivores. And their biological diet is whatever they hunted, killed, and ate in the state that they killed it in. Now, we're not going to go deep into that discussion on diet, but I want you to at least understand that when we're feeding them a processed food diet that is enzymatically dead, loaded with sugar that is harmful, full of non-organic ingredients, hormones, chemicals, pesticides, and genetically modified ingredients, we are causing massive amounts of harm. The second area we need to look at in this pollution is water. We need to be feeding structured water that is highly filtered and, in my opinion, has molecular hydrogen, but we're going to get into more of that later. We need to be looking at what is touching our pet's skin. Are we doing laundry in xenoestrogens? These are chemical compounds like the standard stuff that you see at the store. Or are we using products that are organic and sustainable and are not giving us more of these xenoestrogens and causing harm? What's the air quality in your home? Do you have mold? Are you using air fresheners that have chemicals and petroleum products in them? Got to really pay attention to that. Electromagnetic frequencies, the EMF that's in our homes, the dirty electricity running through the walls, the routers in the house, all of our electronics, our smart appliances, and of course the 5G that is even coming from our neighbors. So we have to be really paying attention to all of this. And then one more is our own state of mind, the ants that live in our brain, which are the automatic negative thoughts that we as humans have. It's stinking thinking, and we all have it. And it's really about paying attention to that so we understand what is it that we need to deal with and shift. Number 2 is essential nutrients. Essential nutrients are those nutrients that the body cannot make in sufficient quantity on its own. Now, I think it's fascinating that we have this complex body, this earth suit that we get to play in, and it does miraculous things. It can repair itself. It can regenerate itself. It does all these things that another machine like a car can't do. However, it is reliant on essential nutrients to keep going. And it comes from our diet. So if these essential nutrients are not in our food, then we are going to have health challenges. So we want to make sure that the essential vitamins, fatty acids, aminos, minerals, those have to be in the diet. And we use them as a supplement to make sure that they're there. Number 3 is we have to heal the leaky gut. Leaky gut means that the lining of our gastrointestinal tract, which acts somewhat like a piece of cheesecloth, has become damaged. So just like if you were holding up a piece of cheesecloth and you were to punch holes in it and then you try to drain your chicken soup, pieces of your soup are going to fall through those holes. Well, that's happening inside our gut when all of whatever we ate is going through the digestive tract. It's supposed to be filtered so that only the right size molecules can come into the body, to the bloodstream, and travel to the liver. But when we damage it through things like sugars, glyphosate, which is ubiquitous in our environment now, hormones, chemicals, all of these things are causing damage. Stress causes damage. High cortisol causes damage. So when those things are happening, we're getting holes in this membrane, and then things from the digestive tract can come in that were not supposed to come in. When they go by the bloodstream to the liver, and the liver sees that as a foreign invader. One of the many jobs of the liver is to mount an inflammatory response to kill the invader. Well, that's a good thing because that's what kept us surviving for so many millennia. However, it was not designed to work 24/7. So if every bite of every meal that your pet is having is creating this inflammation, this leaky gut, and damaging things are coming in constantly, then that inflammatory reaction is never turning off. And the end result of that are all the dis-eases that we see that we can name and blame. Number 4 is detoxification. Now we have 6 organs of elimination: the kidney, the colon, the lungs, the liver, the skin, and the lymphatics. Along with the lymphatics, I now include the fascia. It's the Cinderella tissue because it has been overlooked for so long, but it is an important part of our body. When we look at detoxification, these organs work wonderful. But when we overwhelm them with so many toxins, just since World War II, we have developed over 82,000 synthetic chemicals into our food and water. It's overwhelming these organs and they can't keep up with it. And so what happens is they start storing it into fat and tissues. So we have to aid the body in being able to get rid of stuff, especially when we're doing things like treating cancer, where we're trying to get rid of abnormal cells. If the organs of elimination can't take that waste product and get rid of it, you're going to get more sick. So that's very important. And then the mitochondria is number 5. The mitochondria are little energy organisms that live inside of our cells. We have gazillion trillions of them, or we're supposed to. And their job is not only to produce energy, but it's also to be the coordinator of our immune system. So the mitochondria communicate with the entire microbiome to signal the cells on what they should be turning on and turning off. How amazing is that? And then number 6 is clearing trapped emotions, because with all dis-ease, there are always trapped emotions associated with that. So we go back to those ants in the brain, the automatic negative thoughts. They're super important because we're creating neurotransmitters based on the thoughts that we're having, and our pets are in training to those energies, which if they are causing stress, then we're causing stress in our pets as well. So we want to be able to recognize these automatic negative thoughts and then do something positive about them. So I mentioned that there is no disease. I think there is dis-ease, meaning that the body is no longer in balance. There's no homeostasis going on. There's only 3 things that cause this. Number 1 is a deficiency that we just talked about, deficiency of essential nutrients. We have to be able to provide that to the body. And then number 2, the toxicities of what you just talked about, massive amounts of toxins that we're exposed to. There's no way we're going to get rid of all these things. They're ubiquitous in our environment now. It's the conversation all about how do we fix the terrain of the body so that we can help eliminate these in enough ways that the body can still function. And for most of us, it's a combination of deficiency and toxicity going on at the same time, worse in our pets than even us. And then, of course, the mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, I want to speak a little bit about water because we are made up of 70% water, but it's not the water that runs out of your faucet. So Dr. Gerald Pollack, who is a professor at the University of Washington, has a massive amount of information on discovering the fourth phase of water, which is a gel phase that lives between the liquid and the solid. And what it looks like is a negatively charged phase of this gel that exists around cells and organelles. When that negative charged space expands, it causes all of the other solutes to get pushed out into what he calls the bulk water. And that creates a negative and positive charge that is very strong. It explains why there's surface tension in water. It explains why clouds stick together. It also explains why if you have a superficial cut on your arm, you don't just ooze out water. It's because that structured water is in the form of a gel. Now, structured water has many names. You may have heard fourth phase water. Dr. Pollack calls it easy water because he describes it as the exclusion zone. As it expands and gets bigger, it pushes everything else out of it. Ordered water is another word, coherent water, liquid crystalline state water, bioelectric water. They're all the same thing. And this structured water is what makes up all of the space in our body. It makes up our blood, our fascia, our tissues. It's in our bone and our bone marrow. If we become even slightly dehydrated, it has a significant impact on the body. The more dehydrated we get, the sicker we get. So water is extremely important and it needs to be structured. We have aquaporins in our cells, and these are the little holes that allow that structured water to come into the cell. And I think it's pretty fascinating that it understands that it doesn't want to have everything come into the cell. It only wants the right size molecule, the structured water, to enter the cell. So when we are drinking tap water or unstructured water, then our body has to mechanically convert that into structured water so that it can actually get into our cells. Well, that takes a lot of metabolic energy to do that. And sometimes we don't do it very efficiently. So we actually stay dehydrated. So many of my clients, when I ask them, what do you give your pets to drink? They go, oh, we give them filtered water. It comes from the refrigerator. Well, no, that is not structured water. And it's only filtered for iron, which is that rusty stuff, and for the smell of chlorine, but it's not healthy water. In fact, water coming from plastic bottles is worse because it still has all the toxins and about another 24,000 chemicals from the plastics that it was bottled in. So we're talking about a lot of bad things that we're getting through water. So when I say we're made of 70% water, our pets are 70% water, we have to really take a serious look at what are we drinking? What are we giving them to drink? Because we're really adding to the burden of toxicity with them. Now, I'm going to take it one step further because in today's modern age, we have so much more damage happening in our bodies. There's so many more free radicals that are occurring in our body from not just normal metabolic activity, but from stressors and from toxins and from all the things that are going on in our world. So a free radical is an OH minus. And in order to neutralize that, it needs a positive ion. Well, hydrogen is H plus. So if you remember your chemistry, when you take an H plus and you put it with an OH minus, not only does it neutralize the free radical, but it makes a structured water molecule. How cool is that? So I think in today's modern age, we have to have a way of being able to meet the oxidative stress that our bodies are under. We're never going to be able to eat enough antioxidant foods to do that. But one easy way to do that is by drinking structured filtered water that has molecular hydrogen in it. And so we do have a machine that uses a magnesium reaction. I love this machine because it doesn't require electricity. I live in Florida. The power goes out quite often. And so I can still make water by simply turning on my faucet. It goes through 14 filters. It goes through this process using magnesium, and the outcome is a hydrogen infused water. Now I want to tell you a little bit about live blood analysis. And I use this as a way of measuring the fourth phase of water, of measuring structured water. So these are red blood cells. Their job is to pick up oxygen, deliver that to the tissues, pick up waste material from the tissues, and deliver that out the lungs and out the body. It's a wonderful system, and the red blood cell uses its surface area. So imagine it's like a tennis ball. If you take a tennis ball and you put it underwater in a bucket, the entire surface area of that tennis ball is connected to the water. It's touching it. So you have full activity happening as an exchange between the tennis ball, i.e. the cell, and the fluid around it. But if I start to pack a whole lot more tennis balls into that bucket, so much to the point that they're all touching each other, they're going to look like this. And this is a condition we call rouleau. And it's where the fourth phase of water has collapsed and it no longer has enough negative charge to push everything away from it. So the cells collapse in on each other. Well, now you're looking at a bunch of cells where most of the surface area is covered, so it can't pick up oxygen and deliver that to the tissues, and it's not picking up enough waste material and getting it out of the body. So over time, we get severe derangements to the whole metabolic system. Now, we were taught in vet school that rouleau is normal in cats and horses. That, my friends, is a horrible lie, because over my last 25 to 30 years of doing live blood analysis and using elements that help to expand the fourth phase of water, I can make that rouleau go away in every species. And when it happens, these animals start to go from surviving to thriving. So here's an example. This is a cat. The video on the left is the blood of a cat where he's so sick, all of that fourth phase water has collapsed, super toxic cat. And we put him in our pulse electromagnetic frequency machine. Now we see the blood cells are not pretty yet. They're still rouleau, but they have some shape and they're starting to break apart. We did 4 consecutive days in our pulse electromagnetic frequency machine, and this is what the blood turned out to look like. So now we can actually see that this cat was anemic. We have some large red blood cells and we have some small red blood cells, which is an indicator of anemia. But now these cells can actually do their metabolic job. That is remarkable. This is a horse. We were told this is normal on horses. It is not. So in this particular case, I went to the racetrack and I did a bunch of horses. We did their live blood. And then I put a PEMF, a little sticker with frequency on each of the horses. They went out, they breathed, they came back in, and we repeated their blood. And they're on the lower right-hand side. Every single horse, the red blood cells separated because the fourth phase of water expanded, and the performance of these horses was hugely improved. I need to explain the autonomic nervous system because this is a critical portion of how we heal or don't heal. So the autonomic nervous system has 2 branches. As you see on the screen, there is a sympathetic branch and a parasympathetic branch, and they live on a teeter-totter from each other. So when one is turned on, the other is turned off. Now, there are times when we may be nice and balanced, and that's wonderful. But when something happens in our lives that causes us to go into a high state of sympathetic tone, the fight, flight, danger, bad things are going to happen. In the olden days, it was a saber-toothed tiger jumping out while our ancestors were trying to collect berries or something. That survival system is imperative because we wouldn't have been able to survive our dangers without it. But it was never designed to stay on 24/7. When the danger is gone, the parasympathetic side now kicks in. So it turns on, and that's the side where we rest, repair, digest, detoxify, and reproduce. And it makes sense because if you're fighting for your life, you're not going to think about being hungry. You don't care if you have to go to the bathroom. You're just probably going to go while you're running. And you're not thinking about who you're going to have sex with, because all you're concerned about in that particular moment is making sure you live. Then once the danger is over, you've got to repair your wounds. You've got to rest and recover. Now you start to get hungry again because you need to feed the body, right? All that makes sense. Well, what makes us go into a sympathetic state in our modern world? Maybe waking up sleep deprived by the alarm clock, eating some kind of a processed food breakfast with lots of sugar in it. And then if you have children, getting them off to school or taking them to school, sitting in traffic if you have a job where you have to drive, you're exhausted in the middle of the day. Then when the day is over, you have all your extracurricular activities, whether it's you or the kids, and then you don't have time to cook. So you have that sad standard American meal, the standard American diet of processed foods and things cooked in seed oils and horrible, horrible stuff. And then the credit card debt and fighting with your spouse. You finally get the kids off to school, you finish their homework, and now you still have project deadlines. So you're wringing your hair out and staying up too late. Before you know it, it's 2:30 in the morning. You need to get some sleep. You're exhausted. And then you're going to start the whole day over again. I call that the sad day, the standard American day. But if you're in Europe, you can't be laughing at us, because I was over there and I saw you guys had the same lifestyle. So whether it is the sad day in America or anywhere else in the world, it involves the sad diet. We have to start realizing that this is killing us and killing our pets. The reason why we have ants in our brain is because we have all of this programming, our belief systems. But a belief system is simply a thought you keep repeating. But depending on how you grew up, I'm sure we all had childhood traumas and events that happen in our life which make us feel like a victim. And then we watch how other people, as we were growing up, how they handled life. How did they handle stress? How did they handle money issues? And so for many of us, we took on our parents' belief systems. We went to school. We took on our teachers' belief systems about what was real and unreal in the world that we're living in. But it may not be the right conversation that we're having now. Like Einstein said, we can't solve problems with the same mindset that created them. Maybe we need to start thinking differently. We don't want to ignore the ants. We want to bring them up like a computer program. You know, you're looking to look at a file on your hard drive. That's what these programs are. And then we have the discernment to say, is this a program that's serving me? If it is, keep doing it. If it's not serving you, then that's your opportunity to work with a practitioner and reprogram these negative thoughts. This is why it's so important. For the longest time, we knew that the vagus nerve, which runs in our body, was the primary nerve for stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. Yes, that is absolutely true. And that's, remember, where we rest, digest, and detoxify. It's where we make good, strong mitochondria and a lot of energy. What we've learned recently is that the vagus nerve has two roots. It has a dorsal root, which does all your parasympathetic side, but it also has a ventral root. And that ventral root is what we call getting stuck in the cell danger response mode. This is where I'm going to refer to people now. When people have so much stress and so much trauma and they just can't handle it, they go into a state of defense. You know, when the possum thinks he's going to be killed, he plays dead. You know, we've all heard that, play dead like the possum. Well, that's essentially what the mitochondria are going to do when they get stuck in the cell danger response mode and they feel like their planet, which is our body, is going to come crashing down around them. They go in a bunker and they're going, la, 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 I can't hear anything going on around me. I'm just going to wait to see, does my body survive or my planet, or does it not? So it shuts down energy production. This is the number one reason why people that have chronic illnesses, if they're doing everything right and they don't get better, It's because they're stuck in cell danger response mode. There's a program playing that is keeping them in high sympathetic tone. To them, the danger hasn't gone away, and so they can't relax and go into a parasympathetic state, which also means they can't heal. This is several devices that we use to get into a parasympathetic state. This is a pulse electromagnetic frequency machine called a Magnosphere. What's different about this machine from many other PEMF devices is that it works in picotesla ranges, really, really small frequencies, very almost identical to the frequencies in our body. And that's the point, is that it's not trying to smash and interrupt the communication. It's trying to tickle our cells to come back to the normal frequency so that they can function well again. Many of the PEMF devices that are out there are interruptive. They're at high frequencies. And so you feel like something changed, and temporarily it does because you broke the signal, but you didn't fix the problem. And when that signal comes back online again, the problem is still there. So here is a couple of pictures of our staff on the left in with some of their patients having a wonderful session. So we benefit as much as our patients do. And on the right is a very dear and famous veterinarian friend of mine, Dr. PJ Broadfoot. We were at a trade show. Now, you know, the floor is very busy. There's a lot of commotion going on, noisy, loudspeakers going. She is sound asleep because this machine put her in a highly parasympathetic state. This is a different technology that I'm using on this dog. It's a sound frequency. Lucas is 5 months old. He came in because he was ADR. His owner noticed that he just ain't doing right. Very powerful medical term there. So with Lucas, she didn't know what was wrong, but he just wasn't acting right. So I took x-rays. I saw that his back was very much out of alignment. And I went to do a chiropractic adjustment. And I want you to see how hyper and anxious he is. He's always this way. I touch him and he just blows up. And his mom can't hold him. He's just freaking out. Not fun to work on a dog that way. I'm sure it's not fun for mom, and it's not fun for Lucas either. So I was unable to treat him. So we started doing our sound frequency. So I'm going to let this play. We've been going 3 minutes before I started showing you the video. And I want you to notice he'd already laid down, and look at his eyes. They're getting heavy. They're starting to droop. He's trying to stay alert, but he can't. He takes a big yawn. He's just becoming relaxed. He's going to fall asleep with his head up. And in another second, he puts his head down. So that, my friends, is taking a dog from high sympathetic tone into a parasympathetic state. But now the question is, can we adjust him yet? So here we go. We're still playing the frequencies. Mom's giving a little butt scratch, but she's not holding him. He's not struggling, and he's not going anywhere. So no manhandling. All we did is put him in a parasympathetic state. I wanted to show you his before pictures on the left. His back was really arched up and his back was spasming. And then after we got him to relax, we did his chiropractic adjustment. We repeated the x-rays and his back was almost back in alignment. We did, about a week later, we did one more adjustment and he was back to normal and never had a relapse. Now I'm going to show you the same thing, but on a bird. So before I start playing the music, look at that stink eye this bird has given me. This is Chirp. He's 23 years old in the picture. When he was a baby, he split his lower beak on a wire in the cage. They had taken him to several veterinarians and they were told that the beak could not be fixed. The bird would never be able to live with a fractured beak like that. And they just needed to put him to sleep. Well, they weren't willing to do that. So they brought him to me. I too was unable to fix the lower beak, but I wasn't willing to put the bird to sleep. I said, well, let's just keep his beak trimmed and let's see how he does. Well, Chirp, for the next 23 years, figured out how to break his seed with his beak properly trimmed. But he had to come in every 3 to 4 months for me to retrim his beak. So you can see that that top beak is really long. Now, he's giving me the stink eye because he knows I am going to pick him up and trim his beak. So I'm going to play the music now and listen to how angry he is.
Quit.
Mad.
All right, Dad, let's see what he does.
We've been playing the music just a few seconds. And he keeps fighting his dad. He's trying to get out of his arms. He's squeaking and squawking and not happy. Daddy's going to get frustrated and he's going to put him back in the box.
Come on, sir. You're going back.
Okay, so we wait about 2 more minutes. I take Chirp out. I'm able to trim his beak. I didn't video that part, but here I am after his beak is trimmed. You can see he looks beautiful again. Now, listen to the cooing noises. This is no longer an angry bird. He is now in a parasympathetic state. He's lifting his wing so I can pet underneath his wing. He's much more relaxed. He put his head down and he says, oh, come on, just pet me now. And he's enjoying me petting him. Look at that. He literally is loving this. And this was a bird that a few minutes early was giving me the stink eye because he was in high sympathetic tone. All species do this. So these were a couple of snakes that came in that were also, the owner said, I just bought these snakes and I don't think they're quite right. There's something wrong with them. And I did their physical exams. I couldn't find anything wrong. So I decided to put them on another device that we have that also is about frequency and vibration. The 2 little black handles that are above the cages help to concentrate the frequency right in one location. So I'm going to play this and I want you to notice that both of these snakes curled up underneath the highest point of frequency. So somehow they know when it feels good and they just do it innately. This is just another example of how we use the machine. We just set the animals on it and they love it. Now I want to talk to you a little about fascia decompression, because I mentioned in the very beginning that we have 6 organs of elimination. And I mentioned the lymphatics because, in my opinion, the lymphatics and the liver are the most important organs of detoxification because they do the most work. But the fascia is what connects everything. And the lymph runs through the fascia. So it's extremely important now that we recognize this amazing organ for what it is, that we help keep it healthy. And things that cause the fascia to have a problem include surgery, scars, trauma, gravity, inflammation, just lack of movement, EMF. All of these things are affecting the ability of the fascia to be able to allow things to move through it. So one of the things that fascia will do when it starts feeling like the structure of the body is becoming unstable, it's going to try to hold everything in place. So it takes kind of a gripping and winding motion to hold everything together. And I want to show you now what, before I show you what it looks like, the fascia is the communication highway for everything. I already told you that the mitochondria not only make energy, but they also communicate with all other aspects of the body. The parasites, the microbiome, the bacteria, the fungi. By the way, they are not our enemies. We cannot live without these organisms. But when our terrain, the body, becomes unhospitable, it's sort of like a garden that isn't tended to well. And when it becomes inhospitable, the first thing that grows back are going to be the weeds. And that's what happens in the body when it becomes inhospitable for all the good organisms. Then the pathogens start to come in because they're trying to establish something in the hopes that the environment will eventually get better. And then we go back into that state of thriving. So super important that we pay attention to what is the underlying terrain of the body. Do we have a garden that's healthy and happy and promoting good health, or do we have a lot of weeds coming in? So this is Kuda, and I'm using him as an example because his coat is so short and shiny that you can actually see where the fascia is going to be gripping. So his owner explained to me that he's only 4 years, it's under 4 years of age, that he has been showing some pain on his left hip. He gets up slow and he's limping on it. So if you look, his tail is pulled to the right, which it should be right in the middle, and his left hind leg is pointed out. And I think you could appreciate that he's putting more weight on the right foot and the left foot is kind of pointing out and not as much weight bearing. We call that the flat tire. Then if you look over to the right, we can see all these wrinkles. Now, some people would have thought that was muscle. That's not muscle. That is the fascia gripping down, sort of like a mattress when you put the little stickers in, you know, and it pulls it down. The fascia is causing this gripping really bad around the neck and shoulder region, but goes all the way down the back. What that translates into is that we're not going to have as much energy getting in. There's less oxygen, less nutrition, less waste products getting out. And his dad was pointing out that there was a fur pattern on his knee that was just like chaotic. And that's the same thing, because the fascia is twisting and gripping. You're getting this chaotic pattern in the fur. We took x-rays and they support the fact that his back is twisted a little bit. So on the picture on the left, that's our ventral dorsal view. His head is the top, his tail's to the bottom of the screen, and he's laying on his back. And you can appreciate that there's a little bit of a curve. It kind of bows out just a little bit like that in the picture. And then on the lateral projection, his head's to the left, his tail's to the right, but he's laying on his side. You can see that his back looks like a dome. It's arched. It should not be domed. Now I'm going to show you an example of how fascia can affect a patient. This is Max. He's 2 years old. About 6 weeks earlier, he had tried to jump on the bed and he missed. And for a couple of seconds, he was a little wobbly and out of sorts, but he recovered. So the owners didn't think anything about it. And then about a week later, he started to have this weird thing where when he went to walk, his hips would swing out to the left and he walked like he was shaped like an L. And they weren't really sure what was causing it. He wasn't screaming in pain. He wasn't crying out. He was still eating. Everything else seemed to be normal, but he walked with this crookedness. He was eating a kibble diet and had his whole life. This is the video that the owner provided, and you can see he literally walks like he's a crab on his back end. On the picture on the right, you can see his tail is really pulled off to the left. This was him when he came to my office on presentation. He starts to walk, and then all of a sudden the spasm hits and he just curls right up. So took x-rays on the lateral projections, wasn't super noticeable, but on this view, you could see that the left paravertebral muscles were contracted, and it's causing the spine to kind of bow out and contract in on this side where these muscles are spasming and holding him every time he went to walk. So on the video on the left, I'm going to play that, but I want to tell you, watch his left hind leg. See how it's lifted right now? This is one of our fascia decompression moves, and I'm letting his gravity do the work. As I'm holding him,
just letting the gravity of his own body straighten him out. See how he just dropped his feet?
so it took about 4 minutes for that to happen. I didn't bore you with watching the whole 4 minutes, but just the part where he actually dropped his leg. And the way I'm holding him is helping him to take a nice deep breath. And then I do a couple of other moves for him. Now, 6 hours later, and we did a chiropractic adjustment as well. Notice that his tail is now in the center of his body. He is evenly wagging his tail, and this is him walking. The shaking that he does is secondary to still integrating all of this energy. Sometimes he'll sneeze as well. But now he's able to walk back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he has no more spasms because we fixed the fascia. This is Moon. She came to me in 2020. She had bladder cancer, transitional cell carcinoma. And we had treated her in 5 weeks. The cancer was gone. And about 2 years later, the owner called me back and said, something's happened and she is dizzy and she has a head tilt. So we brought her back in, and through a thorough workup, we determined she had a condition called idiopathic vestibular syndrome. We really don't know what causes this in dogs and cats, but one of the problems is that they're left with a head tilt. Even after the dizzy episode goes away, they have this head tilt that persists. The other thing with her was that because she had the head tilt, her rear end was extremely weak, not just because of the head tilt, but because she had all of this fascia that was gripping and not fixed. So we started doing the fascia decompression, and I want you to watch how strong and vibrant and bouncy her back legs are. Super, super strong. This is like night and day. And then coming at us, her head is straight. What is significant about that is in all my years of practice, I've never seen an animal fully recover their head tilt from any therapy when they had idiopathic vestibular syndrome. So that was pretty remarkable. I want to talk a little bit more about incoherent light and the effects it has on the body. So we talked about how structured water, coherent water in our body, that's what makes us healthy. But all the EMF that we're exposed to and all of the blue light and so much of the chaos that we're exposed to is causing illness. And there's a lot of companies out there that have claims that they do EMF protection and this and that. Well, this company approached me and I said, well, I got to see it to believe it. So we had the owner of the company come in and work with devices in our office. Now, this is stainless steel plates that are covered in this, what they call a plasmonic. And in essence, light comes in, reflects off the stainless steel, reflects back out, but now it sends back out coherent light. So what we did is we took several cases. This is Bruno. Now, Bruno is typically very hyper. And Dan, the owner of the company, in his hands is his tower, and he's just literally shining it at the dog. Doesn't have to touch him or anything. On the right-hand side, you can see he's just shining it at the dog. Well, the first thing that happened is within a couple of minutes, Bruno laid down. Bruno never relaxes in my office. So right there, by just changing the structured water in his body, he relaxed, went into a parasympathetic state, and laid down. But we did more than that. We took his blood before we did the treatment and 10 minutes after the treatment. On the left-hand side was the before, and you can see that he had some round cells, but a lot of gnarly looking cells. Some of them were stuck together. It just wasn't real pretty blood. 10 minutes of just having this tower pointed at him, his cells expanded. They got rounder. That's because the fourth phase of water is expanding. So it draws with it the ability to that cell to go back to its original shape. And that's remarkable. This is Popcorn. Alyssa's holding the tower on her right hand and just shining it at him as well. And 10 minutes. This is a before picture, a lot more rouleau than Bruno had, but this dog has a lot more issues. But look at the dramatic change on the right. 10 minutes. We've literally restructured the water in this dog's body. Another instrument that I love, love, love is using infrared therapy. Now, you'll talk to people that are in the far infrared camp and they go, the far infrared is the best ever. You have to do far infrared. But then you talk to people in the near infrared world and they go, no, 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 no. The near infrared is what is amazing. And you have to have near. And then there's a little group in the middle, which does the mid-range. Well, I am a follower of nature, not mankind. So what does the sun do? The sun produces full spectrum infrared. The problem is we are not out exposed to the sun like our ancestors used to. We live inside of our houses. We get in our car. We go to our jobs. We're inside our jobs all day long. And then after we leave our job, we either go to the store or we go shopping or we go home, but we're just not outside in the sun. So we're not getting the infrared spectrum that starts in the beginning of the day, goes all the way through to the end of the day. Our pets are not exposed to it either because they're typically in our houses. So this company has many devices, but what I like for the animals are the pads. So I'm laying on the big pad in the center. And as soon as I put the pad down, my cat came over and laid on it because I like this thing. And it produces negative ions along with full spectrum infrared, but very low EMF. So super safe and really wonderful to use. They also make these saunas that are portable, but it's not really great for the animals to be in the sauna by themselves because the floor does have pads and it gets really hot in there and it's kind of hard to look in and see them, and it gets really warm and we don't want them in there like that. And it's not fun to have them on your lap because you're going to be sweating and then you got this hairy animal on your lap and it's just not fun. So I like the pads for the animals. We do have full spectrum saunas as well, where our pet parents can go in with them, but we just find that the pads are really convenient and the owners can do them at home. The next area that I'm so passionate about is assisted lymphatic therapy. Now, we've already talked about how important the lymphatic system is. It's one of two of the most important organs of detoxification, but it also is one of the most important systems for boosting the immune system. We make our T lymphocytes when we are stimulating the lymphatic system. One of the reasons why our ancestors had good lymphatic movement was because they had great movement. They had high intensity movement. They were running from the saber-toothed tiger, or they were out hunting or trying to capture their prey, but they had a lot of movement. In our modern world, we're not moving as much as our ancestors did. So for people, they talk about using rebounders. We have a vibration plate as well. But the advantage of this machine is that it produces these negative ions, microcurrents, and inert gases through these glass probes. And we're able to hold these probes over drainage areas. So you have different areas where the lymphatic system drains. So it's kind of like acting like a Drano, right? So we're holding it over here and it's sending these currents down, thinning out the lymphatic drain area and helping it to empty. And then we take different areas of the body that we decongest with these probes, and then we sweep them into the appropriate drainage point. And then we'll come back and hold it over that drainage point again so that it drains down. So many of these animals are so loaded with toxins that they have very, very bad lymphatic drainage. Well, just think of Kuda that we saw earlier. You know, all of that restriction in his coat, all of that fascia gripping is keeping the lymphatics from being able to flow properly through there. After we get done with our lymphatic therapy, we want to go to the next step. But I'm going to show you a case where we use lymphatic therapy on an animal and it was life-changing for her. So this is Hope, 7-year-old female spayed that had an abusive owner and he lit her on fire. That's why she doesn't have ears, no eyebrows, there's no hair on her body. She was literally lit on fire. So to heal her, she went to the doctor a lot of veterinary visits. She was being fed a kibble diet, but tons of antibiotics, tons of pain medication, tons of steroids. She recovered and was doing okay until she turned 11. And then she spiked a really high fever and came down with an autoimmune disease called rheumatoid arthritis. This dog was so painful in her joints that she wouldn't walk. She refused to walk. She was in a lot of pain and so much pain that she quit eating. So when they brought her to me, her gut was decimated. She's in a tremendous amount of pain. First thing I did was a chiropractic adjustment. Then I did her lymphatic drainage, got her in a parasympathetic state. And when I got done with her lymphatic therapy, this dog rolled herself up, started walking around my office, found our freeze-dried stash of freeze-dried raw food, and went to town eating. Just in one treatment. It was remarkable. We continued working with her every week, and we also started doing hyperbaric oxygen treatment with her and ozone, and she made a 100% fabulous recovery. This is Popcorn, same dog that we saw a few minutes ago with the light tower. And Popcorn came to me because he was vomiting, he wasn't eating, he was having really chronic diarrhea. This had been going on for a very long time. The veterinarian she was going to just kept giving her more drugs and it wasn't making it better. He'd have good days and he'd have bad days. Well, he is a VIP dog. He is a very important pet because he is a dog that is trained to tell his owner when her blood sugar goes down. So he's a therapy dog and he's a medical trained dog. So we wanted him to get better. This is his blood before we did lymphatic. You can see the cells look like little small slinkies. They're stuck together and they're not moving. These are videos. But on the right-hand side, immediately following his lymphatic therapy, what do we see? The cells are separated, they're flowing, they've got energy and movement because now I've expanded that fourth phase of water. We have good polarity going on, and he gets regular treatments and his illnesses are totally resolved. No drugs. After we do our lymphatic therapy, we go into the foot bath. This is popcorn again. And the foot bath, what it does, in addition to helping to keep them in a parasympathetic state, through the electrolysis that's happening in the water, it draws these oppositely charged ions out through the skin into the water, particularly heavy metals. For some of our larger dogs, the dog on the left has a bone cancer. If you look at the right carpus or the right wrist, you can see it's very, very large. And for her, we put her up on a bed padding and then we just put her feet in. For our small dogs and cats, we just do doggy and kitty bath. The whole body goes in and they do great with it. You can tell even cats enjoy it because it's still helping them stay in that parasympathetic state. So they enjoy it. Even our staff enjoys it. This is Alyssa, my daughter. She's getting her work done, but she also knows the importance of detoxification. So she's doing her foot bath. Ozone. I don't know how I ever practiced without this because we do ozone for everything. It's a naturally occurring product in the body. Our mitochondria make ozone as a byproduct of making energy. It is antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, anti-cancer. It helps to, as a pro-oxidant, to produce more glutathione, which is the antioxidant that our body produces. It turns on over 200 anti-inflammatory pathways. It is an incredible product and it's safe, it's effective, it's easy to use, and it's affordable. We use it intravenously. We do it rectally. We can bubble it through oils and breathe it. That's the only way you can do it safely, to breathe it. We can put it under the skin as a subcutaneous injection. We can do it through acupuncture points. We can lavage with it if we have open wounds or if we've done dental work on an animal, we'll flush during surgery. We can flush the abdomen. It's just remarkable all the advantages that we have. But when we do it rectally, sometimes people go, oh, really, doc? What is that doing? You got a little gas going up the butt. How is that ever going to actually do anything? Well, I'm going to show you. This is a dog on the left before rectal ozone. Looks like that cat, just a mosaic. The cells are stuck together. There's no life and energy to them. They don't even look like red blood cells. 10 minutes after doing ozone, that's what the same blood from that same animal looks like. And you can't deny changes like that. So we were able to, with ozone, expand that fourth phase of water. And now this animal is functioning so much better. What's next is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We know that bad things don't grow in oxygen. It's a simple rule. But for most animals and most people, our oxygen saturation is not as high as it should be. We use hyperbaric oxygen to help push that oxygen out into the tissues, raising the oxygen content in the tissue, thereby making the terrain inhospitable for other things to want to grow. Nowadays, you can buy chambers for home use, which I think is remarkable. And I think they're affordable compared to what a hard chamber is, or versus going and paying somebody, because the deal with hyperbaric oxygen is frequency. You can't do one dive and get fabulous results. It's all about how many dives you do so that the body starts to release its oxygen and sends it out into the tissues. And you just have to have enough dives for that to happen. So I think it is a remarkable therapy. And in my personal opinion, I think everybody should have the ability to do ozone and hyperbaric at home. This is halo therapy. It is dry salt therapy. So we have, it looks like a telephone booth. You see Alyssa and a kitty cat in there. And there's a machine on the outside that grinds the sodium chloride, the salt, and aerosolizes it. So you have these very fine dust particles that are just sent up into the booth. You breathe that in, and it acts like a toothbrush along the respiratory tract. So when you have chronic allergies or a lot of mucus that is in the air passages going all the way down into the lungs, then you want to have something that can clean that. Well, when the salt is absorbed, it pulls all of that mucus and nasty stuff off. You end up sneezing a lot and coughing, but it clears up all of your sinuses and upper respiratory tract. It also works beautifully on the skin. So for a lot of individuals that have skin problems, we have animals that have hot spots and seborrhea and all these different things that are leaving oozy, nasty skin problems. As that salt is being distributed inside the booth, it's also landing on whoever's in there. So it's going to coat the skin and the fur and help to create a better microbial population. The next thing I want to show you is photobiomodulation. We talked earlier about the fact that we are a species that we're made up of frequency and we are light beings. We literally have to have light in order for our bodies to function properly. But when we are light deprived, we start seeing bad reactions. So the answer, of course, is we need to provide more light. So photobiomodulation used to be called low-level light therapy, one and the same. And it's where we take light and use it to create a change in the metabolism. We improve redox signaling. That's the signaling where one cell communicates to the next, to the next, to the next, and passes messages on, sort of like cell towers do for our cell phones. So when we add light to the system increases its enzyme activity and all pathways work better. Well, the problem with using this kind of a therapy on the external body is that we have melanocytes in our skin, these little packets that absorb low frequency of light. So we can't penetrate low light like ultraviolet, blue, yellow, and green. It just gets absorbed in the skin layer and doesn't get down inside to the body. So we use this intravenously. We literally put an IV catheter in, and we have a special machine called the Weber laser, and the fiber optic threads through that catheter literally into the bloodstream. Then as the blood goes past that fiber optic, we have a light that's on, and the cell is absorbing directly those different colors. Why this is important is because we can add a photo activator. This is a natural product that responds to activation of light. So curcumin is an example. A lot of people know what curcumin is, and vitamin C, and lots of different particles that we can use. We put them into the system, and then when we activate them with the appropriate wavelength of light, it takes this potential and starts to get rid of pathogens. So it actually will kill pathogenic fungi, parasites, and viruses, and of course, bacteria as well. The reason this is so vitally important in today's age is because antibiotics will be no longer in under 20 years. The level of antibiotic resistance has so quickly happened. These bacteria are mutating. Yes, we kill some, but then the next generation just goes, oh, I know how to get around that. And so now we have almost no ability to use antibiotics. And 20 years from now, it will be obsolete. So it's very important that we have safe and effective alternatives, and photodynamic therapy is one of those. This is Tucker. He's the first dog in the entire United States to receive photodynamic therapy. He had bone cancer, and he came in a couple times a week. We treated him, and in 10 months, his bone cancer resolved. Our last case is Prowler. Prowler came to us with advanced liver cancer. She was feeling so sick that she couldn't lift her head up. She wasn't eating. The veterinarian that diagnosed her didn't have anything else to offer. He said, I don't have anything else I can do for her. I just suggest euthanasia. And the owner didn't want to do that. So this dog was their child. She went to work with them. They didn't have two-legged children. She had her own Instagram page. She was just the love of everybody in their gym. And we did not give up on her. And this owner didn't have a lot of money either. I want to emphasize that because so many times people have the belief system that it's going to cost so much. I'm not going to be able to afford it. Well, they gave me a budget and we worked within that budget. 1 year later, we not only celebrated her 12th birthday, but we re-ultrasounded her and she was cancer-free. So when somebody tells you a limiting belief, just live so that no one believes it. I trust you enjoyed this lecture, that it was inspiring. Our goal is to help pet parents never be left with nothing more to do. And we want these animals to thrive the way that they were intended to thrive, with vibrance, with longevity. We love our pets. We want to do the right thing by them. We start with education. And I really encourage you as pet parents to don't stop with the narrative that's out there today. Seek good knowledge. I've done a 3-hour empowered pet parent course. I've done a 3-hour empowered pet parent course that teaches you all the principles that I just showed you in the slide deck, but not just teach you. We're going to help you to implement that so that you too can turn this around and have your pets live the longest, healthiest life possible, which honestly should be into their 30s. Yes, I said that. They should be living into their 30s. If you go to the Guinness World Book of Records, you will find multiple examples of this. So this is doable, but we have to give them a sustainable lifestyle to do that. And it's not about doing one thing. It's not about, oh, today I'm going to feed a good diet. Tomorrow I'll do some exercise. No, this is a lifestyle that you have to adopt using all 6 principles that I've just taught you so that you truly can make a difference in your pet's life.